we have to carefully manage for the vegetation we want, in addition to managing against the vegetation we don't want. There has been research showing that controlling invasive annual grasses with judicious herbicide use can increase perennial species. And this goes back to the basic tenets of plant competition. If you remove some plants from the competition scene, other plants have more resources, again, especially nutrients and water, and they're going to grow bigger. However, it should be noted that there's also research showing that perennial species don't increase when invasive annual grasses are controlled. It likely depends on the site and things like what perennial species are growing there, how abundant were the invasive annual grasses before they were controlled, and even things like the overall productivity of the site. I do want to mention that in severely degraded areas where invasive annual grasses are very abundant and there aren't many perennial species growing anymore, increasing perennial species may require revegetation or the direct seeding or planting of desired species. And this can be very expensive, and in all honesty, it often results in less than desirable outcomes. It's just not very successful very many times. So it really is best to manage invasive annual grasses while there are still enough perennial species in the plant community to respond positively to something like a herbicide application targeted to control the invasive annual grasses.
I think the best way to increase perennial species in an invaded area is to make sure you've got some raw materials to start with, rather than focusing on an area that has been completely depleted of perennials. It's an annual grass only site, which I think is not as common as some people want to think that it is. That provides one end of the spectrum. So there are no perennials there to recover on their own. Then we're going to have to look at things like seeding or transplanting. We're going to have to intentionally and actively reintroduce desirable perennials to that site. So I like to work on the other end of the spectrum, which is we have enough annual grasses to warrant treatment. And there's a bunch of different lenses through which someone might view that, whether it's a brand new population and an early detection rapid response type approach, or there are enough annual grasses on that site that they are suppressing either the production or the expression of the desirable perennials that are there. I said suppressing because I think that's a key thing. A lot of folks will drive by or ride through an area, and at the surface level, it looks like it's the dreaded invasive grass monoculture, which seems to kind of be this thing that gets talked about all the time. And in many cases, there are perennials that are there, they're just hard to see. They're suppressed by the annual grass competition. And by freeing up those resources, by controlling the invasive annual grasses, those resources may become available to the perennials, and they're able to express themselves closer to what I would say might be a site potential.